Chapter 5. Spaniards in the New World, Plate Ships and Privateers. For about 100 years, the Spaniards and the Portuguese, who took possession of Brazil, had the New World almost to themselves. Although the Spaniards claimed the whole of the West Indies, they made settlements on only 5 of the islands: Cuba, Hispaniola, Jamaica, and Puerto Rico in the north, and Trinidad in the south. When Columbus first visited the islands, he found plenty of bird life. Fish could be caught in great quantities, but the largest native wild animal was the agouti, a kind of guinea pig, which was hunted by the Arawaks with little dumb dogs. The Spanish colonists brought cattle, goats, sheep, pigs, and domestic fowls to the islands. On his second visit to the islands, Columbus took 20 horses, the first seen in the New World. The sight of a man on a horse terrified the islanders. The sugarcane and many other plants, such as bananas and oranges, were taken to the West Indies by the Spaniards. The first Spanish colonists went to the West Indies to seek for gold, also for silver and pearls. They wanted to get rich quickly without hard work, but they got little gold from the islands. And many colonists left the islands for the mainland after Cortez and Pizarro had conquered Mexico and Peru, which gave Spain immense wealth in gold, silver, precious stones, and pearls. Instead of being the chief Spanish possession in the New World, the West Indies were valued merely as ports of call for vessels bound for the American mainland and for supplying Spain with sugar and other tropical produce. The work in the sugar plantations and in the mines was hard and needed numbers of strong laborers. The Spaniards at first tried to enslave the native Arawaks and Caribs and make them do the work. When the Arawaks learned this, many of them fled to the hills. Others fought hard for their liberty. When they were defeated, they were sent to work in mines and plantations, but they were not strong enough for hard labor and soon died. Then the Spaniards raided the smaller islands where they met the Caribs. They were more warlike than the Arawaks and fought so fiercely that the Spaniards were glad to leave them in peace. The few Caribs that were enslaved sulked and pined for liberty and soon died. We read in an earlier chapter that the Portuguese had set up trading posts along the West African coast and were engaged in the African slave trade. Slavery in one form or another had existed from the earliest days of the history of mankind. But in Europe, it had changed to serfdom. A serf was a laborer bound to work on the land where he was born. Then between the 15th and 19th centuries, it had completely died out in Europe, and men were at last free. The attempt to use African slaves in Spain and Portugal had not been a great success. But when the colonists in the New World were in great need of labor on their plantations, King Charles V of Spain, grandson of Ferdinand and Isabella, allowed some of his friends to take African slaves with them to the West Indies. Soon afterwards, the colonists of Hispaniola were given leave to import 4,000 slaves. The slave trade with the West Indies was at first carried on by the Portuguese and the Spaniards, then by the Dutch, and later by the English. During the 16th century, the Spaniards would allow no foreign ships, except the Portuguese, to trade with the West Indies and the Spanish mainland. This caused much jealousy and ill feeling between Spain and other European nations. The produce of the islands was sent to Spain in galleons, which are large vessels with 2 or 3 decks, or in lighter, roundish ships known as caravels. Early in the 16th century, French corsairs, or pirates, sometimes attacked the Spanish ships in the waters between the Azores and the coast of Spain. When France and Spain were at war, French privateers decided that Spanish vessels were fair prizes. A privateer was a vessel owned by a private person, not a Navy ship, but its captain was given permission to attack enemy ships with it. After the conquest of Mexico, between 1519 and 1521, Cortez sent 3 vessels to Spain. They were laden with gold ornaments, fine jewels, feathered cloaks, and other rich spoils from the palaces of the Emperor of Mexico. Off the Azores, these vessels were met by a fleet of French privateers. in spite of the armed vessels sent out from Cadiz to protect them. 2 of the treasure ships were taken. Up to that time, the cargoes of captured vessels had consisted mainly of sugar, hides, cocoa, and dyestuffs, so the captors were amazed at the richness of their prize. The news of the treasure spread from port to port, and soon pirates of all nations were eager for a share of the spoils. When Peru was captured by Pizarro between 1532 and 1533, silver from the Peruvian mines was sent to Spain in plate ships, so called from plata, the Spanish name for silver. French privateers then carried their attacks westward to the Bahama Channel and captured 9 vessels laden with the precious metal. Then the Spaniards sent the plate ships in fleets with a convoy of armed vessels. Even then, the voyage back to Spain was a dangerous venture. The Bahama Passage was made in order to catch the winds that would carry them across the Atlantic, but the passage was dreaded. Reefs, shoals, and frequent hurricanes made sailing difficult, while the network of small islands provided lurking places for pirates, ready to seize any vessel that lagged behind, and sometimes trying to snatch a prize from under the guns of the convoy. Only rarely did the plate fleet reach Spain without loss.